Welcome to this explainer. If you're gearing up for the HSLC English grammar exams, and specifically that notoriously tricky correct tense section, well, you probably know that sinking feeling, right? You're staring at a blank sentence and suddenly you're second-guessing literally every grammar rule you've ever learned. But what if I told you that you don't actually need to memorize 1,000 different rules? What if the examiners are just using the exact same playbook over and over again? Today, we're taking 25 years of really intimidating HSLC English grammar questions from the Assam board and transforming them into a simple, predictable pattern recognition playbook. We're going to focus entirely on identifying those super common tense mistakes and give you the exact tips you need to avoid those frequent errors. Let's turn that test anxiety into absolute confidence. So, here is our roadmap for today. First, cracking the HSLC tense code. Then, the interrupted past pattern. Number 3, the double past dilemma. 4, the since and for trap. 5, wishes and imaginary situations. And finally, top tips for exam day. Okay, part 1, cracking the HSLC tense code.
Okay, let's dive right into this. The absolute biggest secret to acing this exam is realizing that test creators are creatures of habit. They really don't invent entirely new, mind-bending grammatical scenarios every single year. Instead, they recycle the exact same situations, just using slightly different words. It's like a giant puzzle where they keep reusing the exact same pieces. Take a look at this history. Back in 1998, students were asked, when he entered my room, I blank a letter, with the verb being write. The answer was writing. In 1999, it was, when he came in, I blank a letter. Fast forward more than 2 decades to 2020, and the prompt is, when he came, I blank a letter. A student taking the exam in 2020 faced the exact same test of logic as a student in 1998. Spotting these patterns is literally the ultimate cheat code. You aren't just learning English grammar here, you're actually learning how to read the examiner's mind.
Moving on to part 2, the interrupted past pattern. So this pattern is a scenario where someone is right in the middle of doing something and suddenly, out of nowhere, another action interrupts them. Let's test your instincts with this classic prompt from the year 2000. The sentence is, he blank across the road when a scooter hit him, with the verb walk. I want you to pause for a second and guess, what tense would you intuitively fill in that blank with? A really common mistake here, especially under exam pressure, is to just match the tenses and write, he walked across the road when a scooter hit him. But the correct exam answer is actually, he was walking across the road. Here's the rule you need to lock into your brain to avoid this frequent error. The longer ongoing background action must be in the past continuous. So he was walking. It's a process, right? Then it gets interrupted by a sudden quick action in the simple past. The scooter hit him. Whenever you see that word when connecting a long action and a short sudden action, boom, you found the interrupted past pattern.
Which brings us to part 3, the double past dilemma.
Now, this is a major stumbling block that catches out thousands of students every single year. It happens when the examiner gives you 2 events that both happened in the past and challenges you to properly sequence them. Check out this prompt from 1998, the match blank before we reach the field, using the verb start. Both of these things, the match starting and us reaching the field, are already completely over. They're in the past. But your job is to figure out which action physically happened first. The massive keyword here is before.
And this brilliantly illustrates exactly the rule you need to know. Event number 1, the oldest event way back in the deep past, is the match starting. Event number 2, a little closer to the present, is reaching the field. The rule is simply that the older past action gets the past perfect tense, had started. The more recent past action gets the simple past, reached. The match had started before we reached the field. If you think this is just ancient history from 1998, think again. Look at this phrasing from the 2021 and 2022 exams. The guests had arrived before the dinner was set. It is the exact same double past timeline rule. The older event, the guests arriving, gets had arrived. The newer event, dinner being set, gets was set. Recognizing that before keyword rewards you with an instant correct answer. It's a real game changer. Okay, on to part 4, the since and for trap. Examiners absolutely love to use sneaky duration markers to trip you up. Whenever you're reading an exam sentence, words like since and for are giant, flashing neon signs. These keywords signal that an action started in the past and is still continuing into the present. When you see them, your brain should immediately lock out the simple past or simple present and reach straight for the present perfect or present perfect continuous tense. Let's see how this plays out across the years. In 2001 and again in 2019, The phrase was, they blank in Delhi for 10 years, with the verb live. Because of the word for, the correct answer is have been living. In 2002, the phrase was, she blank in the school since 1990, using work. Because of since, the answer is has been working. Whether the exam uses a duration like for 10 years or a highly specific starting point like since 1990, the resulting tense is exactly the same, continuous, ongoing action. Spot the trigger word, apply the perfect continuous tense, and secure your points.
Next up, Part 5, Wishes and Imaginary Situations. Now we arrive at one of the most fascinating patterns. In strict grammatical terms, this is often related to the subjunctive mood, but you know what? Let's drop the intimidating jargon. This is simply how the exam tests you on hypothetical, impossible, or purely imaginary scenarios. Here is a notoriously tricky question from the 2013 exam. I wish I blank a king, using the verb be. Again, pause and guess. How would you fill this in? Be super careful here because your everyday conversational instinct is probably going to lead you right into a trap. In casual conversation, most of us would say, actually, scratch that, almost all of us would say, I wish I was a king. That is a massive, common mistake on exam day. The exam perfect answer is actually, I wish I were a king. So the crucial point is that in imaginary, hypothetical wishes, we use were for all subjects. We completely ignore the usual rules where I gets was or he gets was. In the land of imagination on the HSLC exam, were is king. Let's look at how this imaginary pattern ripples across 2 whole decades of tests. I wish I were showed up in 2013. If I were you was tested in 2004 and 2018. Another huge trigger is the phrase, it is time. It is time you went home, appeared in 1998, 2006, and 2016. And finally, he behaves as if he knew everything, appearing in 2009 and 2016. Spotting triggers like wish, if I, it is time, or as if instantly tells you to use a past tense form to describe a present imaginary situation. Finally, Part 6, our top tips for exam day. We've analyzed the data and we've uncovered the patterns. Now let's pivot towards empowerment and turn all this knowledge into a concrete action plan for when you're actually sitting at your desk with the clock ticking down. When you look at a blank question, do not panic. Instead, execute this 3-step exam day checklist. Step 1. Scan the sentence for keyword triggers. Look for words like before, since, for, when, or wish. These are your cheat codes. Step 2. Determine the timeline. Ask yourself, is this an interrupted past? Are these 2 sequential past events? Is it an ongoing action? Step 3. Confidently apply the matching tense pattern we just learned. Don't rely on what just sounds right. Rely on the structural pattern to avoid those frequent mistakes.
25. That's not just a random number. That is the total number of years of really daunting HSLC past papers we just successfully condensed down into a few simple, highly beatable patterns. A quarter of a century of exams, proven to be wonderfully predictable.
Remember this quote as you study this week. The exam isn't testing every grammar rule ever written, it's just testing if you can spot the pattern. You now have the playbook to see right through the examiner's tricks. So I'll leave you with this. When you open that test booklet next week, which keyword trigger are you going to hunt down first?